marketing the know-it-all in the business. Okay, so what happened to me once was that I got accused of being a Miss Know-it-all, and I was deeply offended by that. And obviously, it could have been said to me in a different way. But I thought about it for a little bit, and I kind of understood what they meant. And I'm going to explain exactly why marketing knows a lot more than pretty much anyone in a business except maybe the CEO. Okay, so the way that marketing works is that it is all encompassing. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. When we make a marketing plan, what we do is that we gather information basically across the business. So this can come from the financials, it can come from customer data, it can even be things like sales information, HR. It's a diverse range of documents. And it can be qualitative interviews where we go and talk to people about how they're working. We can be even observing people for a day in order to create the marketing plan, or spending a couple of months with people to really immerse ourselves in terms of their world. And it's not just people in the business, it's the customer. We might immerse ourselves or get an agency to immerse itself in that culture. We might commission an entire market research study in order to understand a particular demographic. We might hire a consultant or an agency to basically give us that industry context and information. And what happens as a result of that is that we have a lot of information about the business, about the organization, and it's usually more than anyone else in the organization, apart from maybe the CEO if they're very hands-on. And this creates a lot of friction because with marketing, the way that it's designed is that we take all of that information and then we start to build meaning from it, and we start to create strategies that encompass all of this. We start to make calls about how we want to make revenue, and those calls are based on all of that data versus individual pieces. Challenges can happen when an organization is not really data driven or even data led, because what happens in those situations is that you become the office crazy because you've got access to all this data. You've analyzed the data, you've done all the things to make some meaning out of it, but everyone else in the company is not really getting it. They're not understanding what any of this data means. So they're holding perceptions of the way things are, and especially this happens when the company is an older, more established one, as has had a successful legacy. So as a result of that, you're the office know-it-all. And I remember someone asked me once, how does it feel to be able to predict trends? You should probably put some investments into shares. And I thought about that for a second, or more than seconds, minutes, hours maybe. And I thought, I actually get what you mean, because I have a wealth of information that pretty much no one else in the business, apart from the marketing department, really has on hand in terms of having analyzed. So this is where marketers often get stuck, because you know a lot. It can become a situation where you're like a couple of steps ahead of everyone, and you might be bringing to light information that actually makes people pretty uncomfortable. And that's where the friction usually happens, because you're telling them information that they may not know, they may not even want to hear it, to be honest. And because marketing is in that revenue side of the business, you kind of have to do that, because if you don't do it, it's really challenging. If the organization is set in its ways, holding this information, being able to create these strategies is very, very difficult to actually put into action, because the business or organization will resist you at every single chance that it gets, because you are saying one thing, you've got all the access to the information, whereas they might have little pieces of it, or maybe not even care about the pieces of it, or have the time in most cases to deal with those pieces of information. So it can be a really challenging situation for a marketer. And I've been teaching data analytics recently, and that's one of the things that I do outside of marketing, because believe it or not, even though I hold like a senior role in marketing, I definitely fit in some education as a part of my week. So I've been teaching, and teaching data analytics has been fascinating for me, because what it's done is that I've been teaching it from a data perspective rather than from a marketing perspective. But the thing is that a lot of the data analytics profession actually belonged to the marketing manager in the past. And this is where I guess now, because we have access to so much data these days, we have these positions, business analyst, data scientist coming into play, because the amount of data out there is so immense. So, it's great to have someone who has those technical skills and analytical skills in order to analyze that data for us. And also with the advancements of AI, obviously that comes into play as well. So being the know-it-all, it's a really, I agree, marketing is a know-it-all, and I'm not afraid to admit it. And sometimes I feel like I know what's going to happen like 3-6 months ahead, because the trends are a lot more obvious when you have analyzed all of that data and understand it. And that's the tricky part of being a marketer in that context. So being a know-it-all, how do you work things so that people actually follow or support you? Firstly, you have to have a really supportive manager. I've found that if you don't have a supportive manager or someone above you, like a CEO, you're not going to get anywhere, because they are going to be in denial of what you know. And that is a really difficult place to be in. The next thing is that it's about convincing, and this is where presentation skills really matter. I did Toastmasters. I've also worked agency side, so I've had to pitch and present a lot, and I would recommend to practice doing that. I'm doing this YouTube channel, as you know, to practice as well, because I do think that this is something over time that I will get better at. The fact remains that I've been doing this consistently now for some time, and the more that I do it, the easier it's actually become. So having those presentation persuasive skills really helps as well. And I don't think being like that is manipulative or anything. It's basically us explaining the situation in a way that is engaging and convincing, and presenting the facts, because in marketing we don't make things up, despite what some people might think of the profession. We don't generally make things up. So having those presentation skills is important. Documenting what you do is important too, obviously. So that's something that I've definitely done in pretty much any context that I've been in. And I think the final thing is that if you're aware that this is how things are for you, it's about recognizing that people are not in that position, And that sometimes these gaps have to be filled. And what I try to do is I try to present the information to them so that they can understand it. And if they can't understand it, it's really it's on them. It's you know, you can teach it to people in different ways, but if they're not going to accept it, then that's unfortunately the way that it has to be. So I just thought, yeah, I would talk about this. Miss Know-it-all is one of the things that I've been called throughout this profession. But yeah, I agree. Marketing does definitely know the business or organization.